Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Y'all don't really have nothing going on at the bottom of the screen. I don't have nothing scrolling. As you know, it's primary season. Did you vote? And how do you feel about the candidate of your choice? How do you make it work for you? How does one make their vote work for them? You have to get involved with every aspect of dealing with your political leaders that you put into office. As I said, you can write in to your candidate of choice who's won the election. If you feel like him or her are not doing their job based on the statements and or promises that they made while they were on the campaign trail. So what's going on today in the current state of politics in America? The president has come out and showed good on one of his promises. He's canceled a significant amount of student loan debt for those who have went to college and are struggling to pay back loans that may have been from predatory lenders, student loans that may have come from schools that have lost their accreditation and now, you know, people can't get jobs in that field, or they have degrees that are not worth the paper that they're printed on because of loss of said accreditation. The war in Ukraine still rages on today. We're 6 months, going on 6 months strong into the war. The Democrats are in power, but let's not become complacent. Let's not rest on the fact that they're in power. As I said, to make our leaders work for us, we have to stay engaged. It's the state of affairs in American politics because, it's just like anything else. These people can get in office and become complacent. They can feel as if they're untouchable now. They can feel as if, they've crossed the finish line, they've won. And there's not, no sense of urgency to fulfill campaign promises. So, here at Soluble, as I've said numerous amount of times, we're solidly left leaning. We're solidly in the Democratic column as far as how we vote, the policies that the Democrats stand for. More than anything, supporting the middle class, supporting working class America, and doing whatever it takes to help them go from doing good to doing even better. So that's where we're at. But as I've said, just like Republicans, Democrats alike, they can get in office and they can become relaxed. They can get amnesia. So that's where you have to step up. At Soluble here, we chose to get involved by creating a podcast that we put out on a weekly basis, to try to inform and encourage. On the Republican side, the current state of politics is primary season is at the forefront of their minds. And getting Democrats out of office is at the forefront of their agenda. We're moving forward. We're moving on. The coronavirus is now in our rearview mirror. We're starting to move on from it. And, it just depends on your political leanings as to, whether you feel like the country is going forward on the right track or the wrong track. As I said, it's based on your political beliefs. Now, of course, the Republicans they have made a loud outcry about the student loan forgiveness that the president has instituted, that he's written into law, that he's getting ready to bring into effect. this cannot be a tit for tat thing, and we cannot fall into that trap of going toe to toe, blow for blow, tit for tat with Republicans. We know that they're going to try to create a crisis. Once again, go into the playbook, fear mongering. Let's create a crisis. And you know, the sad thing about it is they don't care if it hurts the American Treasury system, because these investigations, which are mostly stirred up to bring down a political opponent, there's no there there. There is no there. But they use these investigations to tear down their political opponent through fear mongering, propaganda, demagoguery, to make said Democratic candidate look bad, and therefore they can win an election. Now, as I said before, a lot of these are personal attacks. Most of these investigations do not stem forth from something that they've done politically, unethically while in office, something of a corrupt nature. Let's take Benghazi for an example. Months, years of investigations trying to dig up dirt on a political opponent, Hillary Clinton. But at the end of the day, there was no there. But the American taxpayers had to come up with a lot of money just to pay for this investigation, to pay for them to try to dig up dirt, to try to find something. But at the end of the day, there was no there. So that's just not a wise use of taxpayers' dollars. That's our stance here at Soluble. So where do we go from here? To the polls. To the polls is where we should be going. Another talking point for the current state of politics today is the war in Ukraine. As I said, is going on 6 months. And it seems as if Mr. Putin is somewhat of a mad scientist, a madman in charge of a nation of people. After 6 months, a superior army, superior economy, superiority in manpower, they haven't been able to take Ukraine. So, you know, we have to keep our eyes open and our eyes on the prize for something diabolical, could even more diabolical than what's happening now, could very well happen in Ukraine. The war is in the 6th month, and he's no closer to his military objectives, his military goals, than he was in February when the war first started, because of the resolve and stiff resistance of the Ukrainian people. And this is not going to change. So as I said, you know, we have to brace ourselves for something diabolical from Mr. Putin, because that's his nature. And he's dangerous now, like a wounded or cornered animal, because he's losing. He don't want to deal with the embarrassment. He don't want to deal with the fact that this smaller country is making Russia look weak. So he'll probably try to pull out all the stops for a victory. Right now, something that's up to now has been totally unheard of. There is a nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia that's right now at the center or the forefront of the fighting. This in itself is diabolical, where the Russian military will occupy this nuclear plant and threaten clean air, threaten lives with a nuclear catastrophe right there in the region. And it's even more diabolical because if something happens at this nuclear power plant, if there's a meltdown, for example, this is not going to just affect Ukraine. It's going to affect Russia as well, because they're right there next door neighbors. Who knows which way the wind will blow in the event of a nuclear meltdown. So it's very diabolical to do something that not only threatens Ukraine, but could very well threaten the lives and the livelihood of one's own country. which in this case is Russia, the instigator of this war. So in today's politics, that's where we're at here in Ukraine. We're 6 months into the war. They're no closer to toppling the government and putting a phony leader in. They're no closer now than they were at the start of the war. The Russian soldiers have low morale. They don't really want to be fighting. Their heart is not really in the war. So that's one of the main reasons also why there hasn't been as much progress as far as taking Ukraine. So why not come to the negotiating table? This may not be the nature of Mr. Putin to negotiate, which he would see as a weakness, because he's had to pretty much bow down to negotiating with a foe that he sees as lesser than Russia, that he sees as not as great as Russia. So, with his pride, with his foolish pride, he would be hard pressed to come to the negotiating table with Mr. Zelensky. He would rather try to annihilate him in war and with weapons of war. So that's where we are right now in today's politics from an American point of view. Now, since the war started, Mr. Putin has banned certain Americans from even entering the country. Hillary Clinton, just to name one. There are others that doesn't come to mind right now. But we all can assume who he's not banned. The previous president, 45, does not have a ban as far as traveling to Russia. He's free to come and go as he pleases. And since, they have such a chummy relationship, the previous president and Vladimir Putin, for the sake of humanity, for the sake of making himself great, even if he hasn't made America great again, the previous president has not tried to reach out to Mr. Putin to stop the war, to bring him to the negotiating table, to try maybe and even ask, what are you hoping to achieve here? So he's not banned from the country, but at the same time, as far as in America's interest, because we're giving large amounts of money to Ukraine in military and financial aid. And that bleeds us. Slowly but surely, it bleeds us. It bleeds our financial resources. It makes things unstable in the world as far as food supplies, energy, or anything that Russia exports a great deal of, or countries outside of Russia may depend on Russia for. So you would hope, for the sake of a better world, a stronger America, that the previous president, who, as I said, has not had a ban, Mr. Putin has not banned him from traveling to and from Russia as he pleases. Let's see him speak up. Just take the high road. Can the previous president do that on behalf of America? On behalf of the money that is slowly being siphoned off to help Ukraine, which is the right thing to do here, to give them military aid, to help them with a foreign aggressor who's killing women and children indiscriminately on a random basis. The student loan forgiveness that the president has begun to write into law, that the president has begun to bring in effect to help people who are under a tremendous amount of debt through student loans. Whether it's through schools that have lost their accreditation, whether it's through predatory lending, as I said, this can only help these people, these individuals. It takes a burden off of them so that they can contribute back to the American economy in other ways. I mean, there are guidelines there. There are certain criteria you have to meet as far as for example, what your annual income may or may not be in order to get this debt relief. So it's necessary. It'll go a long ways in helping people that are burdened by this debt, who couldn't get a job in their field, or like I said, victims of predatory lending where they should have never been qualified for the loan in the first place because the people who gave them the money knew they couldn't pay it back. This will help. It's somewhat of a band-aid approach as far as the amount, but it'll go a long ways in helping these people redirect their lives, kind of a breath of fresh air to give them the resolve to go ahead and finish what they've started, or to press ahead. And as I said, contribute back to the American economy in some kind of way to make it even stronger than what it is now. And we know from the Republicans' point of view, it's all negative. There's nothing good to say here. But you don't see these same Republicans say, for example, if the previous president puts taxes on China, he puts tariffs on China. China stops buying the American farmer soybeans or other cash crops that American farmers grow. And the president, starts to write him a check, starts to kick him out of check on a regular basis because they've lost that revenue source from China. Republicans don't say anything. They don't say anything as far as, this is federal welfare. This is like, another form of welfare. They say nothing. So as Democrats, as I said, we can't get involved with the tit for tat because, we have to come to the realization that there's nothing that a Democrat administration can do that they're going to really approve of. They want it all to be bad, and they want to do anything in their power to make President Biden look bad. And what's the main objective there? I mean, it's not a good idea to be a cheerleader for a president of the opposite party, to be a cheerleader for his failure, because not only does the president in office at the time fail, but America fails. So this is definitely not the patriotic horn that we expect the Republicans to blow on. It's very unpatriotic. I mean, here at Soluble, we were pretty much strongly against the previous president and his administration. But at the end of the day, we always hope for the president to do the right thing towards America. What we felt like would really make America great again, having nothing to do with strict or wrongfully executed immigration policies or bigotry or anything of that sort. But wholeheartedly, here at Soluble, and I think I can speak for a lot of my fellow Democrats out here, no one was actually cheering for the president to do bad, to make bad policies, or to just look at anything that he was doing to cast it down as negative or not good for America. We really wanted the president to succeed because, as I said, when the president succeeds, Democrat or Republican, America succeeds. So that's our stance here at Soluble, and that will always be our stance. But as I said, with the Republicans, on the other hand, this is what makes them such a dangerous party, because when a Democrat is in office, they're quick to point out what he's doing, quick to make false accusations. But at the same time, when they get in office, or when there's a Republican in office doing the same thing or even worse, it's crickets. It's crickets. You don't hear anything. They sit on their hands. They bury their head in the sand. They look the other way. And the current state of affairs right now, the current state of politics in the Republican Party is corruption, lies, half-truths, propaganda, spin. And they'll say and do anything to win. They'll say and do anything to win. Right now, the previous president is under investigation all over the country. New York, Georgia. The feds are looking into him in DC. And yet, this is a president who, by all accounts, by all verbal accounts from himself, he loves this country. But when you have love for your country, if you're a political official, if you're a high-ranking official, especially the highest office in the land, and you're becoming the most powerful man in the world, you don't flout the laws of America. You don't have disregard for American institutions when you love this country. You don't try to tear down the government as it currently is. If there's anything weak about the government, anything bad, negative, if you're president, one would think, one would hope, regardless of party, that you would go into office to really do whatever it takes to, in the words of the late Ronald Reagan, make America that shining city on the hill. And that's where we're at. Let's just be frank about it. And here at Soluble, as I said, in order to get to a solution, which is what we're all about, to get to a solution, to get to a political solution where we're back to bipartisanship, when we're back to working across the aisles, when we're back to compromise. That's where we're trying to get here at Soluble. That's our solution to a better political environment here in America. The finger pointing, the vitriol. If the Republicans are not going to let it go, now is the time to make our voices heard. As I was watching the Sunday talk shows, the Sunday political talk shows, whether it was Meet the Press, Face the Nation, or This Week, the number one concern that's going on with Americans right now is the threat to democracy. And no one has raised this threat level more than Republicans and the Republican Party. How did they get so rogue right? I think it took a lot of people by surprise. How did they get so far rogue right? Can they come up with a common sense solution for gun violence in America? What are their proposals? We see what the Democrats put forward, and then the Republicans come out as a party of no. So what is their plan? Ask yourself. Watch closely. Look for whatever they say their plan is. As I said, on common sense gun legislation. What is their stance? What is their stance on overburdensome student loan debt? What is their stance on Ukraine? Should we send military aid? Should we send financial aid? Should we set up a delegation to send to Moscow to sit down with President Putin? What is their solution? Let's challenge them on that. Not just as Democrats, but Republicans as well should be challenging them on that. Because as I said, the number one thing that's concerning Americans right now is the threat to democracy. And, I never thought I'd say this or hear myself say it, but after observing governments around the world, systems around the world, democracy is the last best hope for mankind. A system where you can vote your leaders in, and if they're not doing the right thing, or they're not doing the things that's in the country's best interest, we can vote them out. It doesn't get no better than that. A democratic system like that. As we well know now, citizens are fleeing Russia. A lot of the soldiers disagree with the war. A lot of politicians disagree with the war. But they have to go along. Why? Because they don't live in the same democratic system that we live in. One man is causing the suffering of millions. And this is what could very well happen in an autocratic system. So to protect democracy, our last line of defense is the ballot box. Let me say that one more time. In order to protect and preserve democracy, our last line of defense is going to be the ballot box. Right now, another thing that's going on, the current state of politics in America, a teacher shortage. A teacher shortage. One of the number one reasons is possibly, a great possibility is teacher pay. Here in the great state of Florida, where we at Soluble reside, I think this state is like 47, 48 in the nation as far as teachers pay. And I think we all can agree that after parents, teachers in our educational institutions is the next best thing after the parent of the child or the parents of these children. Then the teachers are the next best thing. But we're having trouble recruiting teachers, maintaining teachers. And like I said, the number one reason is pay. Closely followed by the number two reason, politics being forced into the classroom as far as objections to CRT or critical race theory. Now, I haven't done a lot of research into critical race theory and what it's all about. But if this is based on a book, a history book, or a retelling of America's past and how it became a rich and powerful nation as it is today, then, let the truth be told. There's a saying, and we firmly believe it here at Soluble, if the truth hurts, you'll be in pain. But the truth is the truth. How can we get to a solid footing if we're not dealing with the truth? But this is what Republicans have managed to do. Now, while they talk about a woke mob since the racial unrest of 2020, while they talk about a woke mob, this is really was put a cold reaction to those who have had ambitions to teach or want to continue to teach. This is giving them a very cold shoulder, causing them to turn a very cold shoulder towards teaching with the attacks on the critical race theory. I mean, could it use some critiquing? Could it be edited in certain ways, have certain things edited out that are not true, or that are worded wrong, or they've been put out there in the wrong context? Of course, it's possibly something like that. Very well possibly needs to happen when it comes to critical race theory. But as I said, I haven't done a lot of research into critical race theory, but this is a big driving force in pushing teachers away from the classroom. How they are pushing this critical race theory as negative, as bad, as indoctrinating our children. Nothing can be further from the truth. However, as I said, if the truth is being taught and it's causing pain for those on the right, conservatives in this country, we understand that. But to do it to an extent where it frightens teachers, it makes teachers feel as though the trade or the institution of teachers as we know it has been changed. Too much politics, too many politics, too much political opinion is being inserted into it, and it's making it bad. They very well have a case. Mask mandates. This was a big attack from the right, when it may have been uncomfortable for the students. We get that. It was uncomfortable for everyday average grown-ups in America. But we were dealing with a pandemic. We were dealing with a highly contagious pandemic where health officials, medical experts thought that it would be wise to have a mask mandate or a mask guideline for students in the classroom because they could possibly take it home to their elderly relatives and infect them. So, right or wrong, as far as the approach goes, the medical experts at the time, led by Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, those who were head of the CDC, they were trying to do what they thought was best for the American populace. And the best thing that the Republicans could do was find a way to flip it. Not because they were concerned or not concerned about people's health or people's well-being in the school, only for political purpose, to try to use it as a way to frighten, fear-mongering. As I said, and that's definitely in the playbook. So when you go to the Republican playbook, it shouldn't be a surprise there. But there was a lot of fear-mongering and critical race theory, and with the mask mandates, with the guidelines for masks in schools, there was a lot of fear-mongering. There was a lot of propaganda there, only to gin up votes. This was the whole purpose of it. And then, as you well know, the Republican Party is a party that puts money over people. So there was another reason that was one of the main motivations. Also, loss of income, the damage that was being done to the economy. So, in their minds, especially here in Florida with our Governor DeSantis, the end thing was, if you had to become a sacrificial lamb for the sake of the country, for the sake of the economy, then so be it. And it wasn't that dire of a situation where one would make this the ultimate sacrifice for country in time of war or something of that nature. So that's where we're at also today with the current state of politics. We have a serious teacher shortage in this country, a shortage of qualified teachers. We don't need teachers who are in the classroom teaching but have had no college education, no college training, no degree in any remote area of education or teaching the subjects that they're teaching. We need to vote. We need to vote because whether you agree with it or not, whether you know or not, this is not good for America. We already rank behind several countries when it comes to math, reading, science. And if America is going to continue to pave the way into the 21st century and beyond, we need qualified teachers. So we should be doing everything to actually bring them into the classroom, bring them into the field of teaching. That's just how valuable they are. This is not a profession that's expendable or that we can look at and say, well, do we really need teachers? We can't afford to look at it like that. We have to realize what's at stake here and realize that teachers are very important. They're very important. They're critical. They're very essential as it relates to the functioning and the progression of the American economy, because these are the future leaders that we're talking about. These are the ones who will be taking our place when we're aged out through retirement or aged out in death. These are the future business leaders of America, the future innovators, the future scientists, engineers. But how far can we go? How far can the students in today's classrooms go without qualified teachers? Let's meet at the bargaining table. Let's meet at the negotiating table to debate critical race theory, not to look at it and instantly cast it down as something that is bad for the country. if it affects one, it affects us all. And the truth is what's needed now more than ever, because with the number one concern of the American populace is being a threat to democracy, how can we get rid of that threat? How can we neutralize, minimize, or make that threat go away altogether? Unless we deal with our issues on a truthful basis. Now you look at a lot of the current political ads that's going on between now and the midterms. And one of the number one things here is stop Joe Biden. Stop Joe Biden. From what? The economy. And I know this is based on your political leanings. If you're to the right, you can always find something bad is going on, even though gas prices are going down. We've had 2 quarters of negative growth, or whatever they say determines whether we're in a recession or not. The job numbers look good. The American economy is getting stronger and stronger every day. We know that gas prices have went down. And the jobs are out here. We're just coming out of a pandemic. So the wheels of progress are turning somewhat slower than if we had actually were coming out of a recession or something that was causing a downturn in the economy. This pandemic is something that a lot of us haven't seen in our lifetime, for a country to, on a whole, to deal with a pandemic that practically shut the country down. And now we're slowly starting to come out of it. With truth. With truth. So between now and the midterms, we as American citizens, we have a decision to make. Which side of the aisle you're going to lean on when it comes to voting. Whether you're going to vote at all. Your vote counts. Your vote counts. Of course, there's going to be a few bad actors, but that's just what it is. It's a few. It's minimal. It's not an overall rigged system that can overturn the will of 70-something odd million people. This is not the way the system is designed. So we know that in the election of 2020, the MAGAites was 70-something odd million strong. And as I continually state, we thank God that they were in the minority, even though they were 70-something odd million strong. Now, in a system where we're dealing with a rigged election, or we're dealing with people stuffing ballot boxes and thus and such and thus and such, those numbers wouldn't have been reflected in the final tally, in the final count. In a rigged system, we're looking for something like 70-something odd million votes from the MAGAites to be actually turned into 65 million. Then there's a problem there. When there's 5 to 7 million votes that have disappeared, or that have been made some kind of way through deceit, chicanery, anything underhanded or corrupt to make these 5 to 7-something million votes go away. That's a rigged system. That's a system where the voting process has really become corrupt. That's a situation in a time for voting where it is time to change the voting laws. It is time to take a serious look at how we vote in this country. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. And as I've said before, and the Republicans should know this, the president did not everything in his power, but even though he was doing his best, he was doing things that caused him to lose votes. Because once people begin to see ordinary, common sense, college educated Americans begin to see what the Make America Great Again plan looked like, they didn't want to go along with it. And that's the bottom line. As I've said before, how do you lose Arizona? How in the world does a Republican lose Arizona in a presidential election? Deal with it. You know, the handwriting is on the wall. As I've stated before, the president disrespected Arizona's favorite son in the late Senator McCain. So he loses Arizona largely based on his disrespect for an American patriot, a statesman, someone who's put their lifetime, their heart and soul into serving America and making America a great country. The president disrespected him. He acknowledged in his death, when he was forced to fly the flag at half-staff, that he was never a fan of John McCain. Couldn't put his personal differences aside for a statesman, for an American patriot. He lost Arizona. But yet and still, the Republicans in Congress and the voting electorate as a whole has said that the election was somehow stolen from the president. And they can't get over it. This is a dangerous ideology. And if this is what consists in the party, in the Republican Party, this makes them a dangerous party because they don't want to deal with truths. How can we be an example for the rest of the world? How can we make these countries who are considering leaning towards democracy and going away from autocracy, how can we make them more confident that democracy is the way to go when we have this dangerous party promoting lies, pushing out falsehoods? And as we all seen, once the president came out after the 2020 election and said it was rigged, it was unfair, and thus and such and thus and such, he caused a coup in Myanmar. The coup in Myanmar, where they were set up for free and fair elections, went south. It went sour. And thus we had a coup there. Largely based on what the president of a free country, largely on what the president of a free country, where there are free and fair elections, was saying. Was the falsehoods that he was stirring up caused this somewhat ripple effect to trigger out, and what happened in Myanmar was a result of that. So if it happened there, if we're not careful, if we don't go to the ballot box and make the right decision, it could happen here as well. It could happen here as well. Now, as I said, between now and the midterms, you know, everybody's running ads, Democrats and Republicans. But it doesn't have to be a time for lame duck legislation. So we're willing to look at what the Republicans are putting out in place of what the current president now is doing. If they don't like the student loan debt forgiveness, what is their plan for some of these kids or people who attempted to go get a degree and through no fault of their own? For example, the school loses accreditation. There is no job in that field, or they've been misled in their field, or they're dealing with predatory lenders. What is the Republican plan? Put forth a plan. If you don't agree with the president, what the president is currently doing, put forth a plan. Now, if you think back, when the previous president first got into office, they looked at the Affordable Care Act, better known to them as Obamacare. They couldn't stand it. They just couldn't stomach it. They was losing sleep at night. So they said, okay, we're not going to take it away. We're going to repeal it, and we're going to replace it with something better. Time and time again, when they would go on cable news networks and they would ask, give us your plan for replacement. Nothing. So could it be the same here? It remains to be seen. But could it be the same tired rhetoric? And that's all it boils down to. It's just rhetoric. It's just talk. They couldn't repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act because they had no replacement plan. The late Senator McCain knew that when he went up to the podium and give it a thumbs down. He knew that. And the senator, regardless of whether he agreed with Obamacare or not, being that he knew that there was no plan to replace it with anything, he had to do the honorable things and not take away what little health care that the people had at the time. He did the honorable thing and gave it a thumbs down because he knew in his heart of hearts there was no replacement for the Affordable Care Act, to replace it with something better. So fast forward to now, as I said, anything that the current president is doing that the Republicans don't agree with, what is their plan? What is their plan for the American people? Not for, just right-wing leaning America, not just for conservative America, because, whether you agree with it or not, whether you believe it or not, this Democratic president now is trying to do what he can for all Americans. What he's trying to do for all Americans, what is best. The Inflation Reduction Act, it doesn't hurt the wealthy. It doesn't take a wealthy person and put them into a poverty-stricken situation where they have to go to work now, or where they have to sell off all their valuables just to make ends meet. If they have to pay a little more in taxes through this legislation, it doesn't break them. As I said, it doesn't take them from kings for life to now they're living like peasants. It doesn't do that. But as I said, if the Republicans don't agree with it, if they don't agree with this Recovery Act, this legislation that's been put forward, what is their plan? And it's up to us as Democrats to challenge them on this, as well as conservatives. It's more for us to challenge, because the Republican voter is not going to pretty much challenge one in his own party. They're going to pretty much go along with the drumbeat of whatever tune that the leaders are playing. They're going to pretty much go along with that. So it's up to us as Democrats to challenge it at all times, anywhere possible. What is your plan? If you don't agree with student loan debt cancellation, what is your plan? If you don't agree with the Inflation Recovery Act, what is your plan? On the right, what is your plan? Because as I told you, and you have to realize this, they're salivating, they're fuming, they're waiting anxiously for a takeover of the Senate or the House for them to regain power when it comes to legislation here in America. And the first order of the day is to investigate Hunter Biden, is to investigate Joe Biden. And like I said, remember what happened with Hillary and Benghazi. There was never a there. There was never a there. Never. And, you have to understand, it hurts America because, for one, the Republicans knew this. The taxpayer money they were spending to investigate this, they knew there was no there. But their end goal, as I said, is to, no matter how bad it hurts America financially, no matter how bad it hurts us as far as the Treasury, it's worth it to them if they can tear down a political opponent so bad that it hurts their chances of re-election. It's not good for the country. It's not good for our standing in the world. And, above all, it's not good for the American psyche. to go forward and keep this country at the forefront of humanitarian government, which is what democracy is now, because it's the will of the people. Unlike in Russia, where it's the will of one person and everybody else has to go along with it, whether they like it or not. So this form of government is the last best hope for mankind. What is the plan? We don't need investigations where there is no there. And then you, before you know it, we've deceived the minds of the simple, and we put a leader in office who can only hurt America. If you notice, as soon as the election was over, there was nothing else to Hillary's emails. As soon as the election was over, and Trump was certified the winner, there was no more mention of it. If there was some there, that was a serious threat to the republic, a serious threat to America's national secrets and the way we gather intelligence and gather information, this would have been carried through. This would have been carried out to get to the bottom of it, to make sure that it never happened again. Because we would have to look at it as a clear and present danger as to what Hillary Clinton was engaging in. But as soon as the election was over, the talk of emails was over. James Comey, the head of the FBI, James Comey comes out in the 11th hour and says, "Oops, we found some more emails." In the 11th hour, right before people went to the ballot box. Now, as the previous president likes to say, we're gonna use it here at Soluble now. This is what we call rigged. This is what we really consider as rigged. Everything has been investigated. It's been looked at thoroughly. There's nothing there. So the American people have settled down, they're settled in, and they're starting to focus in on who is going to be their candidate going forward from 2016 on into 2020. And then at the 11th hour, here's James Comey coming out to say, "Oops, hold up, not so fast. Right before you go into the voting booth, we found some more emails." And it dealt a serious blow to Hillary Clinton's chances of breaking that glass ceiling and becoming the first female president of the United States of America. It dealt a serious blow there. And it turns out it was all falsehoods. But now, does James Comey come forward now and apologize to the American people for this deception, for being misleading in this type of a way? If you care about democracy, and if you can be honest with yourself, you can look at it for what it is and not look at it for what you want it to be. One of the best ways to have a solution in today's politics to stop the infighting and bickering is to deal with things from a basis of the truth. Let's expose the Republican playbook. If there are things in the Democratic playbook that are bad, that are not good for America, we as Democratic voters, we expose those as well. And we go more vehemently. We go with more determination. We're just as adamant, if not more so, when it comes to Democrats doing things that sets America back and sets us as the American people, that sets us back. That's what's on the ballot in November. Truth, integrity. Because if you're not voting Republicans out, that's what you're voting in. That's what we're voting in. Lest we forget the past corruptions that really hurt America and have validity to them. Watergate, the January 6th insurrections here, the breaking down of the American economy, where Main Street had to bail out Wall Street during the Bush years. One thing that we find in common here, these are all Republican presidents. These are all Republican presidents with there. There was there. I mean, at first, we looked at it in hopes of it not being the case. Because as I say, whether you're Democrat or Republican, you shouldn't want the American president to fail or look bad, or you're happy and you're somewhat joyful that this president is engaging in corruption so that you can win office the next time around. No one should want that because it serves no good purpose. But this is the Republicans, and we have to watch out for it. It is what it is. It's not just what we here at Soluble are stating, it's what's actually happened. It's what's actually happened. Watergate was real. The January 6th insurrection was real. The Iran-Contra affair was real. And as I said, what do they all have in common? Republican presidents. The country moving forward at these times under Republican leadership. Now, by contrast, where have we had as far as the Democrats with corruption? When President Carter was in office, the Iran hostage crisis, it wasn't something to be investigated. It wasn't something that was steeped in corruption. You know, it depends on how you see it. Jimmy Carter may or may not have been too weak of a negotiator for being the president of the United States to get the hostages out. But that's where we were at there. Iran hated him so much, President Carter at the time, they hated him so much because he embraced a very polarizing figure from Iran. He embraced an Iranian that most of the Iranian government hated or had outright rejected. And when Carter embraced him, then that sealed his fate. So there was nothing steeped in corruption there. Move forward a little bit. Bill Clinton. We went with Whitewater. We went with the Paula Jones affair. Treasure, time spent investigating Whitewater, Paula Jones. No, they're there. And then the best that the Republicans could come back over was an intimate, illicit affair. This is the best that they could do with taxpayer money. So this is past Democratic, current Democratic administrations, past Republican, current Republican administrations. You see the scandal and corruption on one side. You see a search, a reach, if you will, for scandal and corruption that's not there. Nothing came out of Benghazi that was worthy of locking Hillary Clinton up. There was nothing there in her emails that was worthy of locking Hillary Clinton up. And if so, before Director Wray, who is the current director of the FBI before he took over, if James Comey come out of this 11th hour and say, whoops, you know, we found more emails. What was the end result of that? We never heard. We never heard, if you think about it. If you don't let your collective memory slip on you here. We never found the end result of these emails that Director Comey came up with in the 11th hour, right before the election in 2016. So this is what's on the ballot box. This is what's on the agenda for the upcoming election in November, the midterm. This is what's at stake. Truth versus lies. American progress versus American regression. This is what's on the line, folks. There was nothing to repeal and replace. We're looking now, we're waiting. We're anxiously waiting for the Republican plan, their counter offer to anything that President Biden puts forward or that the Congress and Senate puts forward. Anything that they put forward, we're waiting on it. We haven't seen it. But because we're patriotic, because we hope for the best in America as Democrats, we're waiting. We're waiting for our Republican colleagues on the other side to show us and or tell us what their counter offer is for versus what President Biden and his administration is doing right now. We're waiting. We're watching. Show us what you got. And if they don't show us by November, when it's time to go and vote in the midterm, then you have to know that there is nothing. There is nothing there but a tit for tat. Now let's investigate Hunter Biden if we take over, if we win back the House. That's their plan for the American people. If they win back the House, let's immediately jump into investigations. But all the things that this previous president has done, we'll look the other way. Does that sound patriotic? Does that sound like a party that puts country first? The president came in office with blood on his hand, walked all over the emoluments clause, had relatives or in-laws based on marriage into the family that didn't even have a security clearance, but they were still working in and around the Oval Office, in and around top secret intelligence and documents. The Republicans say nothing. They do nothing. Corruption all the day long. Bigotry. Impeached for bribery. And then as of late, stirring up an insurrection. As of even later, concealing classified, highly top secret documents in some storage locker or some storage facility at his private residence. And the Republicans say nothing. They do nothing. Instead of holding the president to account, and this is evidence of a party that's put party over country. The president is playing fast and loose with highly classified material, which is a clear and present danger to America and to its institutions. The president is playing fast and loose with highly classified materials. And the best that the Republican Party can do is start to be accusatory toward the FBI. They want to know who signed off on it. They're more interested in delegitimizing the FBI raid. They're more concerned with turning down the judge who signed off on permission to execute the raid. They're more interested in this than they are with holding the president of their own party to account. So, this is the current state of politics. It is what it is. And we here at Soluble feel a duty to come on a weekly basis as a constant reminder, lest we forget, or lest we become lax and start to look at it as a political norm, unless we give up as far as feeling as if voting is not going to change anything. We're showing you constant examples of where voting does change things. We're showing you this. You've seen it yourself. If you're paying attention, you see what happened in Kansas several weeks ago when it came to a referendum on abortion and a woman's right to choose. What's in her best interest as far as deciding, what she wants to do as far as what's best for her own body, medicine she may or may not want to take, procedures she may or may not want to engage in. I'm a man, so I don't know what it's like to have a monthly cycle, to carry a child for 9 months. So it would kind of be foolish for me to not, if I was going to write something in the law that affects women, it would be foolish of me not to consult with women to see if these laws that I'm writing into effect is in their best interest. I mean, let's face it, women do birth the generations and future generations into the world. So, we can't help here at Sawyer but to think, and as Democratic voters, it's best for them to have a say in what's best for their bodies. So, voting, it does make a difference. And that's what we're encouraging here. We're not encouraging you to vote Democrats. And we're not trying to discourage you from voting Republican. We're just putting the facts out there as we see them, as they best relate to us. And that's where we're at. A president that comes in office with blood on his hands. The Republicans have no problem with it. A president who fires his entire administration as if running world affairs is equivalent to a reality show called The Apprentice. Fires his whole administration because he knows better, or he knows what's best for America better than all these people who are at the head of these prestigious American institutions that go way back, that go a long ways in keeping America afloat, keeping America a dominant force in the world. Fires them all. Impeached for bribery. Got people in the White House working in his administration with no security clearance. Nepotism. Violation of the Emoluments Clause. Never got a dog. If you remember when Obama was in office, he didn't have a dog at first. Oh, he's Muslim. I told you he was a Muslim. I already told you that. He's a Muslim. Trump never got a dog. Never was pressured to get a dog. Never was accused of being a dog hater. So we have to look at it for what it is. The Republicans come out and they scream loud and proud against what a Democratic president or a Democratic administration may or may not be doing. But at the same time, when the Republicans are in charge, they look the other way. It's not a big deal. It's not a problem. You can't play both sides of the fence when it comes to what's in the best interest of the American people. So here's where we are. And so you have to look at where the Republicans stand on the war in Ukraine. Had the previous president not tried to bribe the president of Ukraine, took him serious, took the country serious as a unified country that has its own right to be self-governed, to have its own right to have its own constitution and a set of laws. And had he took that serious and not tried to bribe this president, we may very well not have this war in Ukraine today. And even though it is what it is now, where we have a war that's raging in Ukraine, as I said, the president has not had his travel pass to Russia revoked, as Putin has done for other American leaders. But yet still he won't speak out. He won't try to set up a phone call or anything with Vladimir Putin to do whatever he can to stop this war. Teacher shortages in America because conservatives have come out very threatening, very hostile towards teachers because they don't like critical race theory. They don't try to look into critical race theory and see if they can find a common ground there, or to see if they can find a phrase, a chapter, a sentence that they disagree with and sit down with the promoters of critical race theory to say, look, this is a very good teaching point, but we need to change this. We need to word this better as it relates to the truth when it comes to history. They just want it gone altogether. They want it to go away altogether. So here we are. Some 70-something odd days to the midterms. And this is where we stand. This is the choice that you have to make. Whether you're going to vote for a party with lies and corruption, or vote for a party that, when they do lie, you can hold them to an account and they'll try to make it better. They'll listen and try to make it right. So these are the choices: lies and corruption, propaganda and spin, or outright truth. But one thing that we know, and that we can be assured of, the Democratic Party seems to be the party that we can negotiate, that we can debate with, when they're not doing their job to make them at least say, well, the American people are concerned, so we have to do something. It's your choice to make. It's your choice to make on whether we're going to recruit good teachers and be able to keep them in the teaching profession, because we've taken politics out of it. We've taken hostility towards mass mandates when there's a serious pandemic going on in the country, when we can give them better pay. This is on the ballot for November. As I said, the war in Ukraine, common sense gun legislation, healthcare here in America, because there is somewhat of a crisis there. Obesity is up. And with obesity being on the rise, it causes other sicknesses. It's a domino effect into other illnesses or diseases, if you will. So all this is on the ballot, and we want to know here at Soluble, as I said, what is the Republican position here? Take a long, hard look at it and don't be deceived. And you will be able to make a good, conscious choice in November. One party is for the melting pot. One party is only for a certain race at the top, and the melting pot be down. And we're a nation of immigrants. With the exception of Native Americans, every other ethnic group, every other race in America is a race of immigrants who have immigrated here. Whether you were forced here or whether you sailed over on the Nita, Pinta, Santa Maria, we're all immigrants in this country, with the exception of Native Americans. So look at the issues, look at where the Democrats stand, look at where the Republicans stand, and hopefully you can make a well-educated decision based on policy, based on what you see. Look at what's being said and make sure it coincides with what's being done. And, possibly your vote can hinge on this. Does what one say in one's party and what one does, are they both one and the same? Or do they say one thing and then when they get in office, it's something totally different? There are damning emails. There are damning emails at the 11th hour. But after the election is over, there's no threat now after all. There are no emails that are a clear and present danger to the Republic. This can't be. This can't be. If there are emails out there, there are damning emails that are a danger and a threat to our way of life here in America, then they can't just be swept up under the rug and go away just because we have another president in office. If there's a there, we need to investigate it and see it through all the way to make sure it never happens again. So it's not a threat to democracy, so it doesn't weaken democracy, so it doesn't change our standing in the world. But as I said, and you can see it for yourself. There were damning and threatening, dangerous emails at the 11th hour of the 2016 election. And after the election was over and Trump was certified the winner, you heard no more of it. What that tells me, and you can judge for yourself, but what that tells me is that there was never any there. But it was a great tool to use to tear down a political opponent to keep them out of office. That's all it was, plain and simple, from A to Z. Emails, Benghazi, whatever. There was never a there. But it worked well. It worked well. It worked to perfection to shatter Hillary Clinton's credibility, to make her never again, in the Republican eyes, be a threat to hold power in the Oval Office. So that's where the Republicans are at. You judge for yourself. Will the Republican Party take the best person for America out of the running just because they disagree with their policies and put someone in office who's unethical, corrupt, won't show their taxes, and accused rapists? And by his own accounts, he just grabs women by the pussy because he has money. And he can just do it whether the woman wants him to or not, and just violate it. This is what the Republicans would choose. It's somewhat equivalent to the Jews choosing Barabbas over Jesus. It's somewhat equivalent to that. So there you have it, folks. The current state of politics that we're dealing with right now in the year of our Lord 2022, August, in the United States of America. We're at a crisis for qualified teachers in America. The war in Ukraine rages on. The economy is slowly but surely ticking towards getting better. We as Democrats, we don't want entitlements. We don't want a handout. But at the same time, we do want well-paying jobs. We want jobs where after we paid all our bills, we could see something left over, because life can't be all work and no play. So in conclusion, as I said, be aware of the policies, be educated on where things stand as far as policy, what you want to see in America going forward, instituted as law, legislation, and you have a decision to make in November. We'd like to thank you for joining us on this broadcast tonight. And we welcome any feedback, as I've always said, welcome any feedback from the right, from the left, because at the end of the day, we all, not just the few here at Soluble, but we all as American citizens should be looking for a solution to today's volatile political climate. We'd like for you to join us on tomorrow, when our discussion will be crimes against children here in America and the need for what we here at Soluble will refer to as an X law when it comes to said crimes committed against children. We'd like to thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. Join us on tomorrow, which is issue day. And as I said, we'll be discussing crimes that are committed against children here in America, against our young. Thank you for tuning in. We look forward to continuing this political discussion, this political podcast on a weekly basis, as we know here that we need a solution to the problem. After January 6th and having democracy teeter-totter on the brink of falling, of democracy as we know it ending, we feel as if everyone should get involved now. So we thank you for joining us, and we'll continue to be here to try to be as informative and enlightening as we can towards today's political climate. And whether it be Democrats, or whether it be Republican, we plan to hold them accountable when they fall short, or when they lie, when they make false promises and get into office and do otherwise. So stay tuned. We'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. And until we see you again on tomorrow with issue day of crimes against children in America, we'd like to say here at Soluble, we're signing off. Good night and God bless. Thank you.